All right, we're back for another season preview with the Atlantic Division Locked On hosts, and we're very pleased to be welcomed by Joe DiBiase from Locked On Sabres. It's a team that really has caught my attention, not only with the rebrand, bringing in some sweet threads. Pilsy's excited for the goat head to make a return, but the on-ice product should be improved as well. Joe, how exciting was that summer for you, and what are expectations like in Buffalo right now?
Boys, good to talk to you again. And yeah, it's been a fun offseason. Relatively quiet among league standards, but fans are happy. And if you asked fans if they were happy 12 months ago, 15 months ago, it was as sorrow as you could possibly get. And now people are feeling hopeful. And I do think the jerseys are a part of that, especially fans of my generation. So I'm 26. When I grew up, the Sabres were red and black. And there's some old timers around here that are still mad they did it in the first place. And you know what? If I was their age, I'd probably think the same way, because the original Sabre uniforms were perfect.
Yep.
And they should have never changed them. But they did. So you've got people like me that grew up with that as the Sabres. And it's special to me and special to a lot of fans our age. And it's cool that they're not ignoring that era anymore. So I think it's super cool that they're going back to those as the third jerseys. And yeah, like the offseason was pretty low key, but they took steps that I think fans were okay with it being low key.
Well, you mentioned the jersey matchup and the nostalgia. It just brings back the 06 and 07 playoff series for me between Ottawa and Buffalo. We're tied at 1 right now. We need a tiebreaker, eh? I guess you guys got us in 97, but whatever. That was Ottawa's first time ever in the playoffs, right? But yeah, those two series were electric on both sides. I mean, that game 1 in 06 might be like the most epic playoff game back and forth. What was it, 7-6?
It's 7-6. That is like I feel like for you guys, it might be the other end of here in Buffalo, Bills Chiefs from last year in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Where you lost, but everyone around you is always like, dude, it's the greatest game I've ever seen in my life. Greatest game I've ever seen. Like, I don't care if it was the greatest game I've ever seen in my life. We lost. And I feel like that was that Senators-Sabres game. I think that was the best hockey game I've ever seen to this day. Just, oh my God. Like, it was at the end too. It was the Senators take the lead with a minute left, and then the Sabres tie the game, the Sabres tie the game with like a minute 30.
I got it right here. We'll pull it up as you go through it.
Look when the time of the scoring in the third period.
Yeah.
So Roy ties it with a minute 37 left. Smolinski and his stupid smile that I still have just
with the yellow synergy.
Oh, just that guy grinning behind the net after scoring that goal just irks me so much. And then Connolly with 11 seconds left. And then they score in overtime. It was 4 goals in like 2 minutes of hockey. Yeah. So, that game, man, was nuts. But you're right. The Senators got it back in 07. Fun fact on that 97 series, by the way, I'm only 2, so I don't remember it. But I do know that it's the only Game 7 the Sabres have ever won in 53 years.
The Sens have never won a Game 7.
Never won a Game 7? Really?
Never.
I mean, we don't have 53 years of track record, but it's not great.
Yeah, I think they're 0-9 in Game 7.
I think the Sabres are 1-8 maybe or something like that. So, but they just got to meet in a Game 7 again. Someone's gonna.
I know. Oh man, no, it'd be great hockey. Those series. I mean, we talked about the one game, but both series were unbelievable. And that's not even to say the regular season games. Everyone remembers the line brawl and then the rematch they played right after in Ottawa, and Peters and McGrattan went in that game. It's just. Yeah. I want that rivalry back, and it just hasn't been there for so long. Like, are we on track of getting this back? Because you said it's a low-key summer for the Sabres. They also had 3 first-round picks, and the first overall pick from last year only got a cup of coffee at the end of this season. He's due, Owen Power is, to have a big, well, I guess this will be his rookie year. I was going to say sophomore, but he's going to be arriving as well.
I think we are tracking towards another potential rivalry between these two teams, and I do hope it happens, because when they released those red and black uniforms and they showed that goat head logo next to that Senators logo, man, it really hit the feels. Because when I was growing up, I mean, I'm 12 when those two teams are battling in 06 and 07, and the Senators were the first team I think I truly hated growing up. I have no reason to hate them now. It's not a long-standing rivalry through the years, but at the time, man, Alfredson, Heatley, Spezza, dude, I couldn't stand him. But now, it's different. So 2 teams got to get good again. And I think the Sabres are tracking towards that. They are not there yet, and I don't think they'll be there this season. I think at best, we're talking about 23-24 being the first year where they are a playoff team. I think they could push for a playoff spot this year because, like you said, it's a lot of youth. It's a lot of rookies. They have two of the top, at least in one place I saw, two of the top 5 Calder nominees for Rookie of the Year this year. Owen Power is a co-favorite.
Yep.
And then I think Jack Quinn was maybe 4th in the odds at plus 800.
Good Ottawa boy.
Yeah. And he, by the way, his development has been through the roof. Fans did not like that pick when they made it.
He was one of our favorite prospects of that.
Yeah, remember
really?
we were on the same mock draft together, and we took him at 5 when we were doing that, and everyone was laughing at us. And now AHL Rookie of the Year, this kid's going to be an absolute stud.
You guys won't mind who Sabre fans wanted instead. The biggest reason why everyone was kind of not even upset. It's an NHL draft. You can only get so upset because you don't know these guys super well. Fans don't, but they were a little perturbed because everyone wanted Marco Rossi. Everybody wanted Marco Rossi, and he was there. Yep. And he obviously has had some health concerns that have derailed his development a bit. And I think he still becomes a good player. But Quinn, man, I mean, he had one of the best AHL seasons in the last 15 years among players of his age. So the expectation is he'll step right in. I think he's in the top 6. And 20 goals, I don't think he's going to do, point a game crazy stuff. But I'm not ruling it out. Like, if he's playing with Tage Thompson, who they just re-signed to an extension, if he's playing with Dylan Cousins, I think that potential is there. And Owen Power, it was only 8 games, but man, he looked dominant at times when he was on the ice. But again, a lot of these difference makers, a lot of these guys are going to change the course of the organization are 19. They're 20. The 3 first-round picks they just had are all 18. Like, a lot of this is on the way and not quite here yet. So I would expect them to take another step this year, but it still feels at least 1 year too early for me to say, all right, yeah, they figured out what their core group is and it's going to work.
Yeah, I've always had a soft spot for the Sabres. As fans of our show know, I'm a Dominic Hasek guy. And yeah, when they brought back the goat head jerseys, that's what came into my mind. And I followed Hasek to Ottawa. So I went to a bunch of Buffalo games. Like, living in the Toronto area, it made a lot more sense to drive to Buffalo and you can actually get tickets rather than try to get into the ACC and pay an arm and a leg. So I definitely have followed along with the Sabres, and now they're on similar trajectory as the Ottawa Senators. I think, like you said, they're a little bit behind. We just had the Ottawa Senators sign Tim Stützle to a massive deal. You had a similar contract happen with Tage Thompson, but I think public reactions for both of those deals were very different. How do Sabres fans feel about making that commitment to Tage Thompson so quick in his career? Well, he's had a couple more years than Tim Stützle in the NHL, but quickly after one good season. He
has had a couple more years. He's had a couple more bad years, right?
Yeah.
Last year was great. Last year was, holy cow. Could not believe it. Wrote him off completely as becoming anything. We were talking about this on our station WGR in Buffalo the other day, comparing Tage Thompson and Josh Allen as just stunning development. So you could not believe what they become. And Thompson, we were nowhere. He was in the AHL. He was a part of a joke. The Ryan O'Reilly trade was a laughing stock. And it still kind of is. I mean, the Blues won a cup, so they certainly lost the trade. But there was a time where they had nothing to show for it. And Thompson showed up last year and just suddenly became a 38 goal scorer playing a brand new position. I think that's the biggest key. Yeah. And I think that's why the Sabres felt very comfortable in giving him this contract. Fans, I think, were maybe a little bit more split. I was on the more critical side of it, that you didn't need to do this right now. The reason why you would do this right now is you're betting on him having that season again. And if he has another near 40-goal season playing center, then you're paying a lot more than $7.1 million per year. And the Sabres are taking a risk, I think, by paying him now, that if that does happen, we're going to be paying him $2.5 million less than we would in the future. So I think that was the reason why they did it. But I think the reason they felt comfortable in doing it is they've kind of wiped clean the first 2 seasons of his Sabres career. 3 seasons, 2 of them were smaller parts of the season. And I think the biggest reason was no one knew how to coach this guy. And Don Granato, who has been the breath of fresh air, NHL coaches, you do not get this very often. The word experimental. How often do you get that in NHL head coaches?
Never. Last time we heard it was Ralph Kruger, and it was brutal.
And, oh, that did not actually happen. Everyone thought he was going to be that, and he was as old school conservative a coach as you could imagine. I like the idea of Kruger because I thought it would be the flip end. Did not turn into that. Granato's been what we thought Kruger would be. Granato showed up and said, we're just going to put Sam Reinhart at center. And it worked, and they traded him. But then Thompson, it's like, you know what? Yeah, he's 6'7", 250, and he's been playing on the wing. But in every coach throughout his entire development, college, AHL, early NHL career, has been trying to make Tage Thompson a power forward because of his size. Granato showed up and said, he doesn't know how to use his body. I don't care that he's 6'7". I'm going to use him like he's 5'9". Put him at center, scoring areas, let you do your stick handling, your dangling. We'll get you in space and let you do whatever you want. And guess what? It worked. And I don't think a lot of coaches would have just given up on, yeah, you're fine not using your body. You're fine not using your size to your advantage. And Granato accepted that, put him at center where he can get more open ice, and it worked. And I think the position change and the coach they have in place now is the biggest reason why they think Thompson's production is repeatable.
And Don Granato was the U.S. NTDP coach before. Is that where you guys got him from?
Yes. I think he would have had one stop in between. He was on Kruger's staff as an assistant. I'd have to look. I think he was maybe one stop in between, but before that, yes. Like I think he made his mark as their coach, USNDT.
Okay, so when I'm looking at Tage Thompson here, his first 145 NHL games, 18 goals. This past 78 games, 38 goals. Hell, he had 24 goals in 37 games after the All-Star game this past season. And watching the highlights of them, how many of them are just catch and shoot short side? Like, this guy's shot is his best attribute, eh?
He's a real-life bubble hockey player. I mean, really,
with the long stick too.
Yes, literally. He gets the puck, he spins, and he shoots. He got better at carrying the puck. He got better in a lot of different ways, but the shooting is where that's where the value came. That's where everyone got excited because he's still a very bad defensive player, even though he's not as egregiously bad as he used to be. He's a better transitional player. He's a better zone entry man than he used to be, but he's still not great at it. He's a better playmaker, but 30 assists. I mean, this is why he's been their number one center just because he's the only guy. Last year, you're not going to be a number one center in the NHL getting 30 assists. That is not going to happen. So playmaking's gone up, but it's still not great. The shooting and the shot percentage is what is a little bit scary to me. And that's why I think I would have taken the risk that he does have that season again, which at that point you're still happy and you pay him the extra $2 million just to make sure, because that's a scary, scary jump in shooting percentage. It almost doubles. And I can see him regressing in a big way this year. Not to where he was. I don't think he'll ever regress to where he was because of the new role he plays, the coach he's got, and the teammates he plays with. I don't think he'll ever go back to that. But he could have 22 goals this year and 50 points. And again, like, that's fine. That's a useful top six player. It is not a $7.1 million player, though. So I guess I'm half-assing it a little bit. I think that there could be regression coming and the contract is a little bit too soon. But at the same time, I don't think it was completely crazy out of the blue that the Sabres decided to give him that deal.
So you said you feel like the Sabres are maybe a year or two away from kind of hitting their point. Is the biggest thing just waiting for this draft capital to kind of graduate and be ready? Or are there more major holes in the organization that are really still a roadblock here?
I would say it's pretty much the draft capital, in part because the holes are being planned to be filled by kids. Yes. I think. I don't really think there's many spots where they're thinking, okay, we'll go address that with a trade. We'll address that with free agency. The blue line is developing very nicely. I think if this team gets good, I don't think they get good like a Colorado for sure, or an Edmonton, or one of these teams that's driven by superstar talent up front. I honestly think Jack Quinn and Matthew Savoy, the kid they just drafted 9th overall, they have they have the most upside of anybody they got. So I'm open to them becoming star players like that, but they're not going to be McKinnons. They're not going to be McDavids. I think if this team gets good, it's going to look like Carolina. It's going to look like just a possession team that The blue line just smothers you, makes no mistakes. Every pass up the ice is tape to tape. Dahlin's development last year, I think, really opens the door to that potential with power there as well. And Matthias Samuelson, who's not going to ever, I think, be a big name around the league because he's very defensive and he doesn't put up a lot of points. That dude was so solid last year.
He's ripped, eh?
Oh, he's huge. He's ripped. He's physical. He's like the perfect modern day physical defenseman. Not just a guy that, the only thing he does is I'm going to bully these guys out from the front of the net, cross-check them, make him pay in the corners. He could do all that, but he is such a good passer. He is so smooth. He's never under pressure. It seems like he's under pressure in his own end. And I think his development as like the number 3 in the pecking order right now in the organization has allowed, with Dahlin too, and power, to be open to the idea that this team could get good just how their blue line gets so strong. And then up front, it would have to come in depth. A lot of these kids, like you mentioned, like we're waiting on Jack Quinn. I think that'll happen this year. JJ Peterka might arrive this year. And the 3 kids they just drafted in the first round, Yuri Kulich, Noah Osland, and Matthew Savoy, get 3 of those guys to develop into impact players. 3 of those 5. And then I think you got a pretty deep forward group. Your blue line looks pretty strong. And finally, the most important thing that who knows who it's going to end up being, goalie. No clue. Ask me 3 years from now who their goaltender is.
Craig Anderson.
It's probably not Craig Anderson, but I don't want to rule it out. I could list 7 guys off. It maybe even Eric Comrie, who they just signed off of Winnipeg. But
I like it.
I like him too. I think he was a good idea for them this year. Yeah. Their plan is probably that one of the kids turns into it, though, like a lot of their holes. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen or Devin Levi. I think they're banking on one of those 2 kids turns into a franchise goaltender with some openness to Comrie can become that, but 27, it's a little less likely. So that's the story, though. It's waiting for kids to show up to plug a lot of these holes.
I like that. Levi's unreal. Obviously, we know him a little bit from the Ottawa area. He played a year in Carleton Place, which junior A. I think he had one of the best seasons all time in Carleton Place. I think
that's
like
where he would have been
37-1.
That's where he would have been drafted from, right? So right before college?
I think so, yeah. Let's see here. I know Alfie, you can hear him in the background. Big Devin Levi supporter.
I think he's saying yes. I think that's
34-2-1 with a .942 save percentage in junior A, and obviously only getting in at that level was drafted 212th overall, but he's looked even better at Northeastern this past year. A .952 save percentage in 32 games. Now, he's just, I guess the one knock on him then is that he's 6'0", and for a goalie, that is a bit of a concern. But his athleticism seems elite. I saw a couple of the highlights he was making at Sabres Dev Camp, just reaching pucks off the goal line. This kid looks like he could be the real deal. He's going back for one more year at Northeastern, though, isn't he?
He's going back for one more year, and then I'd be stunned if he's not on the same. Well, let me rephrase that. I'd be stunned if he doesn't sign his pro contract next year. Right. I could see him starting the year in Rochester in the AHL, but I think he's going to sign. He was even like in the owner's box with the Sabres owners at, I think, the U.S. Open last week. Like, he's got a relationship with the Pagulas. So there's been some thought of they have another goalie prospect, Eric Portillo, who's been the starter for that Michigan super team.
Okay,
and he's a nice prospect.
Does he wear the C? Have I seen photos of him wearing the C? You see that with goalies sometimes in college. I always get a laugh out of that. Anyways, hashtag goalie friendly show.
I don't know, but he's about to leave. I mean, he undoubtedly. I think the writing's on the wall. He knows Levi's crushing it. He knows Luukkonen's here. They just drafted another second-round goalie, and he's going into his final year of eligibility. He's going to leave in free agency next year, college free agency. And I think that has a little Sabre fans spooked because this just happened 3 years ago or 4 years ago with the Sabres with Cal Peterson. 2 goalies in 4 years that were the number 1 goalie prospect in the organization that left. And I think that as Sabre fans spooked of, Devin Levi is going to do the same thing. But the difference is Levi broke out his freshman year. Cal Peterson, it took him till his junior year.
Yep.
Portillo, it took him till his junior year. Levi broke out as a freshman. He'd have to bypass 3 years of pro contracts. Not 1, 3 years of pro contracts. And because of that relationship with the Pagulas, I think he is on the Sabres next year in the organization, probably not the NHL.
Interesting. Just to correct myself, it was Strauss-Mann, the goalie in Michigan before, but we got to plug this setup. Look at that setup is absolutely unreal.
Do we want that in the NHL? Do we like that in the NHL?
No, probably not.
It looks cool for college, though.
Yeah, it looks awesome. I mean, he's got like the football helmet design on the bucket too, and that's an elite setup. Yeah,
oh, so good. So
shout out Strauss, man. That's what we do here. Get way off topic. That was, I mean, I still have a couple more Sabres questions. We'll save that for the very end. I'm going to get an X Factor player and someone who could help your fantasy team if you've got a draft coming up, maybe an under the radar player. But Joe, you got any questions for us on the Sens?
We're going to take a short interruption from our conversation with Joe DiBiase from Locked On Sabres to tell you about our friends over at BetOnline.net. It's the #1 source for all your sports betting needs this season. Find all the latest player development, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth article and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information. They've got live betting, up-to-the-minute scores for every single sport out there. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including football, basketball, baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf, and of course, hockey. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. Guys, it's betonline.net, where the game starts. And now, back to our chat with Joe DiBiase of Locked On Sabres.
I want to ask you guys about that Tim Stützle contract that was signed. $8.35 million, 8 years, and it's only been one full season with the Senators. You compared it to the Thompson contract earlier, and we mentioned the differences, right? That Thompson has been in the league a few extra years. Stützle is younger by, I think, 4 years. But I don't know, does it feel like that contract needed to happen right there? Were you surprised that that deal happened that quickly?
Well, we were surprised. I think that's fair to say. No one expected that because Tim Stützle still has 1 year left on his entry-level contract. And typically, when you're leaving an ELC as a highly drafted guy and you get brought in a 40-plus goal scorer and a veteran in Claude Giroux that still produces points, you might want to wait to make your first big contract ever because your value is going to go up. So we weren't ready for that. We're anticipating Timmy was going to have a massive year and then demand a big contract after, maybe a bridge deal, something like that. But where the difference was is it really sounds from all accounts that Tim Stützle is the one that went to his agent and said, hey, let's get a deal done now. I just want to focus on playing hockey. I want to be here a long time. And having him come in at just a hair over Brady Tkachuk as now the highest paid player in salary on the Ottawa Senators, it seems fair. I haven't seen a single Sens fan that has had an issue or said this is too much too soon or anything like that, because similar to what you were saying, Joe, with Tage Thompson, Tim Stützle had started the NHL as a left winger and things were not going well. And we wanted him to be a centerman. It was just kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, he's young. Let's start him at the wing. We'll get him to center later. When he made that switch to center, everything changed. It didn't happen right away, but you could see that he needed to be a guy that's skating with the puck, that can roam freely, that can bring the puck up the ice with transition, that can pass and shoot and have those options. And that's when things changed, because the latter half of the season, Tim Stützle just went off. I mean, he was a point-per-game guy in the last 32 games of the year. So really, the Senators are banking on a lot of upside, and the fact that they now can add Stützle to their collection of Brady Tkachuk, Josh Norris, Drake Bathson, and Thomas Chabot all locked up and in their primes, the value of that is just immense. So I don't think any Sens fans are kind of worried that, hey, why did this happen so soon and why is it so much money? It's pretty optimistic, to be honest.
Yeah, and also, if the highest pick of the rebuild doesn't pan out, it's probably screwed anyway, so you may as well bet on him.
Yeah,
right.
Fair.
That makes sense. How about expectations for this season? Because I would imagine it would get ramped up a little bit just simply on the fact that they traded for Alex DeBrincat and for the fact that they signed Claude Giroux. And that's the difference that's, I think, not present here. The Sabres didn't make moves like that to get better and to add to the group right away. They might be a year away from their Giroux signing. They might be a year away from their
Patty
DeBrincat.
Kane coming home. Right. We brought Giroux home. I feel like Kane would be awesome there.
It's not going to be by trade, but I do think there's a very good chance that happens in free agency next year.
It's fun, man.
Yeah.
We just experienced it.
But, I would imagine those signings raise the bar. I mean, it have to, right? What's the step forward look like? If they go up what were they last year? 73 points? Is that the number? I just had
Yeah, 73, and BetOnline set the over-under at 73.5. Or no, 76, and it was 76.5. They were a half point under their over-under to start the year.
So I guess with those signings in mind, what's successful? Is an 80-point season successful? If they go up by 7 points. If
I don't think so.
Like, is 85 successful? I guess where would the bar be for you that they got to clear that, especially because they made those moves?
Yeah, they have to be playing meaningful hockey in the last month of the season. And they haven't been playing meaningful hockey in the first 3 months of the season. The last 2 years straight, they've won 4 out of their first 20 games. You're done. Wow. You're done. And I know there was outside circumstances with COVID running through the team. I think at one point they had 11 regulars out of the lineup, and this was before the NHL was postponing games like it was going out of style. But you still have to win your games. I think it was the Islanders and Sens that kind of suffered from that the most at the start of the year, but they couldn't bounce back. I think this was about a 500 team at the end of the year, but it kind of goes back with expectations to signing Tim Stützle to this extension. Last year's most common line mates were Alex Formenton and Connor Brown. Solid middle six guys. I think they're good third liners. And we already know DJ Smith said that starting this year, it's Tim Stützle between DeBrincat and Giroux. So he's getting a complete makeover with his line mates. And if you had told me after watching Stützle play the last year, who are the ideal line mates for him, I don't think you could pick two better. A veteran who is so strong on the puck and a solid playmaker in Claude Giroux, and then a guy who just needs a millisecond to get his shot off, and Alex DeBrincat, a 2-time 40-goal scorer at 24 years old. And there's some risk in that trade with only 1 year left. And I know he's restricted for 1 more year, but probably this summer you make a decision long-term one way or another, whether he's going to be a part of this core. Or the good news, though, is if you can work out a trade where he's going to agree wherever he goes, you probably recoup the value of 2 draft picks. Well, 3, I guess, if a third rounder.
More.
Yeah, if not more, exactly, if he inflates his value playing alongside these two guys. Now, I know his highlight reel last year is riddled with Patrick Kane highlights in it as well. So it will be interesting to see how that in itself plays out. But expectations in Ottawa, like, they skate at it's called the Sensplex right around the corner from the arena. And it's been like shoulder to shoulder with fans watching these informal summer skates. So there is just a whole new level of excitement that the Sens haven't seen. And I think it's something like, you know, they're beaten and battered, and now there's this light shining from outside. Everyone's just kind of running towards it full steam ahead, because this has been a tough team to watch over the last few years. And not only that, it's been tough to be a fan because name your favorite player, they've been traded. There's only there's nobody left from the 2017 playoff run. There's more players in Buffalo than there are in Ottawa from that 2017 Senators run. Really. And once they traded Pajot, it was kind of, that was it for that old phase. I guess the 2019 trade deadline, they also moved Mark Stone and all that. So it's a completely new era, but these young kids, man, they've taken the bull by the horn. They're all buddies. Like, Pierre Dorion got kind of in trouble when he said after the Erik Karlsson trade, they're like, so tell us about Josh Norris. And the first thing he said was, well, he's Brady Tkachuk's best friend. So kind of like selling him as a friend. But then he goes out, wins AHL Rookie of the Year, which obviously you know a thing or two about with Jack Quinn, and then comes into the NHL. And people will say, yeah, he shot 20% last year. That's probably not going to happen again. This guy shot 18% his last year in college and 17% as a full season in the AHL. Some guys, just like Tage Thompson, who shot 15, these guys are shooters. So I think that we could expect it to potentially regress a bit, but the depth of this team has allowed the expectation to extend past just competing for a spot. I think there's a lot of fans who are saying playoffs are bust. I'm not quite there yet. I think you need 1 more year. Jake Sanderson, just like Owen Power, is a guy who's kind of going to come into his own. How much is too much too soon? That'll be a big factor. And the D-core still has a couple pretty big holes in it. And goaltending, I like the Cam Talbot addition. I think Anton Forsberg really came onto the scene last year, signed a reasonable contract, but up front, they're going to score a lot of goals. I know that much, and the rest will kind of have to play out into how successful this team can be.
It feels like at the very least they're going to be fun. Even if they're not, if they, like you said, I think we're kind of in the same boat here. Is just get me to March still having games we care about. Because that hasn't happened here either in 8 years. So that makes sense. But it feels like a lot of the talent is up front. They have talent on the back end too. But is any part of this a showcase for DeBrincat? Is that kind of a narrative that you kind of want to show him that, like, hey, you should sign up for this. And being a part of this locker room and the season they would have if it goes well and they're competing for a playoff spot, that, you know, that's how you get DeBrincat to sign a long-term deal, versus if it all kind of hits the fan and doesn't go well, then maybe he's more likely to say, yeah, I'm just going to sign a 1-year deal and then go to free agency.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. Like, honestly, even yesterday, it was supposed to be Alex DeBrincat's press welcoming to the Ottawa Senators. That was supposed to be the big splash of the day. And then Timmy signs an 8-year deal, and people are asking Alex DeBrincat kind of like, okay, what, like, you're next, like, you're going to sign long-term. And he's like, well, I kind of just got here. Like, I'm not about to do that just yet. Everybody slow down. And we all kind of had to check ourselves, being like, Pierre Dorion can't just sign every single player to massive long-year deals here. It's not always going to work out like that. But I think a big tie for Alex DeBrincat possibly wanting to stay in Ottawa is looking at, it sounds weird to say, but you got to look at the cap structure sometimes and be like, look, this is a team where they can actually fit everyone in. They can actually make this work. It's not just guys getting high dollars and we're getting bounced in the first round of the playoffs like some teams we know. But there's actually a structure here that can sustain this. Yeah, there it is. There's the Leaf.
We always bring up the Leaf file. We ask everyone, actually, Joe, who's your favorite?
Gotta love it. Let's take a look here. I think I like Matthews' black jersey, kind of in the center on the right here. Eyebrows raised a little bit.
He brought his girlfriend. He told her it was going to be different this year.
He's almost seems like he's trying not to react. He's trying not to show her that he cares too much about this. But inside, he's like just burning up inside. I think I might want to pick him out. Oh, actually, wait, change my gut mind. 3 guys over on the right, hand to the forehead. He cannot believe this
that's a good one.
Again. He cannot believe this is happening again. Oh, there's a great video out there of it's just literally a fan cam that someone put up on their TV for the Leafs Bruins game 7, whatever that was now, 7 years ago, them blowing the lead, and just watching their faces as the lead goes down and down and down, and then they lose. Is just we can share some common ground here, and that we very much enjoy Leaf fan misery. We get a lot of every year. It's a yearly occurrence.
Every year. We call this the Leaf Pile. Instead of Maple Leaf Square, it's the Leaf Pile. And right under TB, if you go underneath the guy with the white shirt, that girl looks like she just saw God.
That's good.
There are so many good ones here. Anyways, neither here nor there. But whenever the Leafs get brought up, we have to pull that up and have a good laugh. Pilsy, sorry for interrupting.
All good. I think that kind of sums it up. Is he can take a look at the Sens, be like, they're built different than the Leafs, and there could be some longevity here. But I mean, also a guy like him is going to command a massive, massive contract next, unless they do some sort of short-term bridge deal. Like let's try to squeeze you in the window here. But yeah, Alex DeBrincat is definitely going to be the more intriguing contract that's going to come up here.
I think listening to all this about the Senators and like just the similarities to what's going on here, feels like 3 years from now, Boston's going to be, they have to be done by then, right? Like just they're too old. 3 years, they have to be done. Tampa is probably still very good, but Kucherov will be 34 by then. Like a lot of their guys will be aged. So they might be like Pittsburgh, where we're kind of waiting for it to happen, but it hasn't happened yet.
Yep.
And then Toronto, I mean, who knows, right? Like the cap and like who knows where they're at. Feels like you've got 3 teams between the Sabres, the Red Wings, and the Senators. They're all young and have a lot of reason to believe they're ready to make a jump. Ottawa a little closer, maybe Detroit's a little closer than Buffalo too, but all reasonably should expect within a year or two, we can make that jump to competing for a top 3 spot in the Atlantic. There's not going to be room for all 3 though. Like Florida is going to be good. Toronto is probably still going to be good. I don't know what Boston's next build looks like. We'll see how fast they can do it. And Montreal will come at some point, but they're probably behind. It feels like you've got 3 teams that all have reason to believe they can take a step. And I don't think all 3, I don't think there's room for all 3 to make a step.
Right. Well, it's going to make the division that much better, right? And then you're losing points within it because you're playing them more than the Metropolitan. So I think that kind of makes to your point where it's like, geez, who's the odd man out? But my favorite storyline, speaking of that, is the 3 defensemen on those teams, all up and coming. Jake Sanderson, Owen Power, and Edvinsson. We got a Canadian, an American, and a Swede. Like, how would you handicap that race?
And Moritz Seider. Don't forget about Moritz Seider in Detroit.
True. I just figure he's already established, but he is
That's
super young still.
Yeah. Power. I'm definitely coming from a biased standpoint here because I've watched more of Power than the others. But, dude, Hedman. He's Hedman.
Yeah.
I mean, that's if he turns into what he's supposed to turn into, it's going to look like Victor Hedman. So I would maybe pick him, but again,
I mean, first overall pick, that's fair.
I'm the guy in Buffalo. So it's hard to not answer with Power, I guess, right now.
No, 100%. And yeah, him and Edvinsson obviously have the size advantage, whereas with Sanderson, it's just all skating. He's just so smooth out there. But it's going to be awesome, I think, to watch that storyline develop over the upcoming seasons. I want to finish off today's show with some predictions. We're going to look at our BetOnline totals. Are the Sabres over or under in terms of a total number of points? Joe DiBiase is here with us. You can give him a follow on Twitter as well as at Locked On Sabres. You can go subscribe to Locked On Sabres on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. I believe the Sens and Sabres meet a few times in a row, but not for a little while. Let's see here.
The Sens are the Sabres home opener, right?
Right. Sorry, but I meant after that. No, there are actually 2 games early on. So we're absolutely going to do a crossover right before the opening night of the season, October 13th in Buffalo. Then they'll be in Ottawa on November 16th. And then January 1st, New Year's Day, nurse your hangover with a nice little matchup. And then just like they start the season, October 13th, on April 13th, they close the season. Buffalo versus Ottawa. So I think that'll be interesting. I think that's the game where we get the goat head versus the 2D.
I think it is.
Unreal. What a way to finish strong.
Playing for a playoff spot, hopefully.
Yeah. No better way to get into the predictions. What is your prediction for the Sabres? Like you said, they're kind of a year or two away. It's just playing meaningful hockey down the stretch. Like, are you expecting a top 10 pick, or are you going to be somewhere in that mushy middle?
I think probably in the middle. I would somewhere between 10 and 15. They finished with 76 points last year. I think there's plenty of reasons to think that they have a lot of young guys and a lot of pieces that are going to be added from the development track, that they'll take a step forward this year. And even though there's still big question marks in net, I think they're going to be better in net because they were coming from just Craig Anderson. And Anderson's still here, and he was good last year, as good as you could ask for. A lot of the advanced metrics tell you he wasn't as good as some of the surface numbers. And I might want to echo that. There's a difference between you exceeded the expectations and you were a legitimate starting goaltender. Yeah. Anderson certainly exceeded expectations. He is not a starting goaltender at 41 years old, which who should expect him to be at this point? But now you've got Eric Comrie, who among free agents had the best numbers. The problem was the sample size was so small, but he outranks Dustin Takarski. Dustin Takarski was Craig Anderson's partner all year in goal. Dustin Takarski hadn't been in the NHL in 7 years. He had been in the AHL. They literally are going from a career AHL journeyman to intriguing backup that maybe he's got some chops to be a starter. I think that automatically will give them an upgrade in net. And that's if Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen doesn't just show up halfway through the season and say, hey guys, I'm good already. I'm ready to go. Because he might be a couple of good weeks in the AHL away from taking Anderson's spot. So I think the upgrade in goal and
big upgrade in goal. Got rid of that loser Aaron Dell.
Yes. Also, dude, he was not a fan favorite here. It's
good.
Same.
That holy cow, that hit so bad. And the blue line will be better with Power inserted and Dahlin and Samuelson being a year older, a year more experienced. I would put them around like 82, 83 points. I would take the over on that 77.5 points. I don't think they're going to be pushing for a playoff spot right to the very end. I wouldn't have them playing important games in March, but I'd have them playing important games in February. You know what they'll be? Midway through February, all the Sabre fans are going to be around here going, if they put a 7-game win streak together, they're right back in it. I think we're going to be hanging around that territory in the spring. So that's better. That's a step forward, but I'm not quite at they're pushing for a playoff spot in the final weeks of the season.
So with that, the Buffalo Sabres over-under at BetOnline, our friends over at BetOnline, betonline.net, betonline.ag, is set at 77.5 points. That's a lot better. Last year it was opening at 69.5 points.
Yeah.
Taking the over or the under on that total?
I am going to take the over on that. I think that number's a little low. That would be stagnant. That would be plateauing. They were at 76 points last year. I think there'll be a few wins better just on the goaltending and the blue line from last year, and Jack Quinn from last year to this year. So I would take the over. Ottawa, by the way, are they 86.5 at BetOnline? I saw a really high number for them.
Yeah, well, I'm still hammering the over on that. I think they're a 90-point team. I really, really do. And I think that if we're going to quickly do an under, I put like 10 units on the under for the Florida Panthers. 105.5 points for the Florida Panthers. I'm not saying they're a bad team, but for me, that's the most egregious one. But I think the Sens will be right around 86. I think that to make the playoffs, you got to be closer to 95 than 85. And I think that hopefully there's a final push in the season and that they can get that number closer to 90. But again, you're talking to a biased Ottawa guy. I just want to see late game action or late season action pretty well. Pilsy, are you on the over or the under on them?
I'm on the over on that, and I think you had a fair evaluation of Buffalo, Joe. And where I think the Senators are different in their upgrade this year is Buffalo did make some upgrades, but while Buffalo made those minor upgrades, other teams in the Atlantic had been making bigger upgrades to kind of raise that bar even higher. So where I think the Sens are different is they made the biggest upgrades, I would say, in the division. So they're able to compound those onto where they were already at. Guys like Norris Stützle getting a year older, a year more experience. Having two solid veteran goalies to rely on throughout a season is massive. So I got them at, I would say close to 95 points. Like I'm going 92, 93 points. I think either they miss a wild card spot by a game or two, or they squeak into the final wild card spot on the final game of the season. Like that's where I'm at. Like this season will hinge on the last 3 games of the season for the Ottawa Senators.
By the way, BetOnline, the Rocket Richard Trophy odds that they got up: Tage Thompson plus 6,600, Jack Eichel plus 6,600.
Interesting.
What's DeBrincat at? I know I hammered him to win the Rocket Richard award this year.
He is. I saw him on here. I think he was higher. Yeah, he's way higher. Plus 1,800.
Whoa!
So he is 8th in the odds. Same odds as David Pastrnak. Same odds as David Pastrnak.
Yep.
Only behind Kyle Connor, Kaprizov, Ovechkin, McDavid, Draisaitl, Matthews.
That's funny you say that because I've been using, and obviously living in Winnipeg, it's probably a little bit of a lazy comparison, but I see a lot of Kyle Connor in Alex DeBrincat in the way that they're just kind of quick shot offense, very fast and speedy through the neutral zone.
Hey, by the way, last time a skilled winger left Patrick Kane, Artemi Panarin became a pretty damn good player.
Yep.
Pretty good.
True. I mean, we tried grabbing Kane's center once. That didn't work out with old Artem Anisimov.
Yeah.
Hey, don't be too hard on the Artie party. He did what he had to do when he was here.
Yeah.
Man, that guy was a mammoth of a man. Seeing him in the concourse one time when he was a healthy scratch. Yeah. Anyways, he had that sick year with Patrick Kane. And I'm cheering for Patty Kane to come to Buffalo. I think it'd be a great storyline.
By the way, quick shout out for all your Senators fans, listeners. Sabre fans still hate Peter Schaefer. Just a heads up, because he destroyed Tim Connolly's career with that hit in 06. I'm not even sure that's a famous hit. It's really not. It's probably
I was going to say that one. I thought it was going to be Chris Neal. Obviously, started the whole brawl.
I mean, come on, everybody hates Chris Neal, right?
Well, never suspended.
Outside of Ottawa, never suspended. Definitely a villain here. Chris Neal.
How many games would he have got for that hit on Drury if it happened this year?
Oh my God,
10.
I was going to say 10.
I was going to say 10. That's the same exact number I was thinking. 10 games.
He'd be going to the league office for sure. I don't know how he didn't. He should have at least gotten a game or two for that at the time.
Yeah,
that was.
Listen,
crazy.
Tim Connolly. I'm sure about anything in my life is that Tim Connolly was on his way to winning the Conn Smythe Trophy before he, on his own fault, like it wasn't that dirty a hit. It was a little bit on the line, maybe head down coming across the middle, and he just got head taken off out for the rest of the playoffs. So that's a tough pill to swallow looking back. But
yeah, no doubt. And I always just remember Peter Schaefer as having the weirdest curve in team history.
Really?
Like you've seen here. I've actually got, if you type it in on Google, it comes up right away. I've never seen such a heel curve in my life. Now we're getting inside baseball here, but look at that thing. Like what the hell is that?
That's very weird.
Wait for it.
What is
like a little
even
shovel
that,
on the end?
why? What was the reasoning behind that?
I have no idea. Just being an absolute weirdo. Well, we've already got all your listeners are punching the steering wheel in their car, even talking about Peter Schaefer. So tell me about an X factor. If they're going to push for a playoff spot, I have a feeling I might know where you're going with this one, but who's the X factor here for you for the Sabres to have a successful season?
I could easily go with Power, Quinn, the top prospects that are jumping up this year, Comrie, Luukkonen. I think there's at least some expectation they'll all be at least pretty productive. So I could answer them because the ceiling is so high, but they're all going to be a part of this in some way. I think X Factor, I might go a little deeper and answer with a prospect that not everybody knows about in JJ Peterka. Second round pick of the Sabres in that Jack Quinn draft class 2 years ago. He actually has had as good, if not better at times, production in Rochester as Quinn has. They're very different types of players. Quinn's become a nice, well-rounded offensive player, actually. So I shouldn't really say he's a one-dimensional shooter, but the reason why he was drafted where he was is his finishing ability and scoring goals. Peterka is just 1,000 miles an hour through the neutral zone, carrying the puck in, setting guys up, and it jumps off the page when you watch him skate. And his development has just been a marvel. He was amazing in Germany his first year after the draft. And then last year, I have to look up exactly where he was, but I think he was just about a point a game for Rochester. And he is like on the fence of whether there's room for him to make the team. Quinn probably has a spot in pencil for him. Peterka's probably got to earn it. But here's the thing. He's 68 points, by the way, in 70 regular season games, 12 points in 10 playoff games. So 80 points in 80 games, if you include playoffs and regular season for Peterka at 20 years old. He earned a spot last year. Everyone around here was like, he earned a spot, but they sent him down anyway because they knew we're not keeping the second round prospect up here the whole season. We're going to probably send him down in a week anyway. Yeah. So let's send him down now. All he's got to do is earn it again. I think he's on the team. But again, it's a little iffy right now whether he's even on the team. If he could show up and give them a third rookie that is producing night in and night out, I think that's a big X factor, given that this team is still lacking for stardom when it comes to the forward group. So I'll go deeper even than Quinn and Power, and I'll answer JJ Peterka as their big X factor this year.
Oh, I was just going to say a lot of Sens fans were super intrigued by the name JJ Peterka after taking Timmy in that draft. They're like, let's just bring the band back together. Everyone knew that Pierre Dorion loves connections. We mentioned the Josh Norris, Brady Tkachuk's best friend. So they ended up taking Roby Jarventi, I think the pick before Peterka went to Buffalo at 33rd. Or 34th in that draft overall. So interesting kind of parallel there between the two teams. Peterka, looks like an absolute stud. Pilsy, who do you have for the Ottawa Senators X Factor this year?
I'm going to keep the same X Factor that I gave to the Locked On Red Wings crew, and that's Drake Batherson. I think he often gets lost in the shuffle in NHL kind of industry, people that aren't diehard Sens fans, because you think of the Norrises, the Tkachuks, the Stutzlas, the Thomas Chabot's, all those guys that locked up massive contracts. Drake Batherson, he signed a pretty good deal, but he's making less than $5 million, yet he's still a top 6 player. He's going to play on the top line with Brady Tkachuk and Josh Norris. He's going to play on the top power play unit. He's a guy that was almost a point per game guy last season before he got hurt by, I was going to say your guy, but you've disowned Aaron Dell, so I won't put you in the Aaron Dell fan club, but Aaron Dell ruined a great season for Drake Batherson. He was Ottawa's named all-star, and he's someone that he can do it all. He's a dual threat, pass, shoot. He's great skating. He's great with the puck on a stick. So I think for especially fantasy purposes, that's a guy that might slip in drafts and maybe guys overlook him, looking at the other kind of stronger names in Ottawa. But do not kind of downplay what Drake Batherson can do. I think he's poised for a big season.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I'm going to go with Shane Pinto as mine because the whole reason you bring in all these players, these top 6 guys, is to push players down the lineup and create more depth. I think the Sens' third line, obviously we don't know what's going on with Alex Formenton, RFA right now, a part of that 2018 Team Canada that's being investigated. So we're going to wait and allow that process to go through and we'll judge accordingly. But with with or without Alex Formenton, Mathieu Joseph really kind of made an impact when he came over in the Nick Paul trade from Tampa, 12 points in 11 games. And what was that, adrenaline? And again, playing in the top 6 role. But I think that his speed will complement Shane Pinto, a guy who did make the team last year as a number 2 center, but then only made it 5 games while 4 got hurt, separated shoulder, tried coming back too early, and then on a face-off, popped it back out for the year. So he missed a whole year of development, but he's been in Ottawa for the last month. He's 100%. I think he was getting kind of close at the end of the season. So he's had a full summer of training, and I think that that's a guy who can really come onto the scene. Is he going to be a Calder candidate? Probably not, especially with the role that he's been given. I think Jake Sanderson probably has more of a chance with the D-Corps being what it is. But I expect kind of a 20-goal, 20-assist type season, great defensive minutes. There was a game in college where he won 22 out of 23 faceoffs. I don't think that's going to happen at the NHL level, but he's certainly got some pedigree and ability in the faceoff circle. So I'm going to go with Shane Pinto as kind of an X factor, as though if the Sens' third line can start outscoring other teams, then I think that's a huge recipe for success for them.
All right.
And finally, we got your X factor, but I don't think Peterka is going to be a guy going like 5th, 6th, 7th round in fantasy drafts. Is there a guy like we haven't talked at all about Dylan Cousins? Like, what's the expectation like for him this year? I could see him being a guy to take a step.
Yeah, he could. I don't know how big a step is there for him to take offensively, especially for fantasy purposes. 38 points last year. I could see that getting to 50, but okay. I don't see a crazy high ceiling for him. But you never know. I mean, Thompson just did it. Something we never thought could happen.
Yep.
I think Victor Olofsson's kind of like an easy answer for this because he's been such a quality goal scorer, but I think he's probably deeper than a 5th, 6th rounder in fantasy, but 20 goals last year. And that was with a 4-month stretch where he didn't score.
Yeah.
Because 4 months?
4 months.
Bad, yeah.
And in part, it was the biggest reason, in fact, the whole reason, I think, he screwed his wrist up. Halloween last year, he screwed his wrist up, and he's a shooter. It's all he does. He is a hired gun. The only thing he can do well is stand on the power play and just rip one-timers, and he's phenomenal at it. But other than that, he's a very average hockey player. Yeah, he went last year from, was it Halloween? Yeah, it was Halloween to February 15th. So we're talking
Halloween to Valentine's Day.
31 games where he didn't score a goal. And again, I think I chalk that up to the wrist injury. The other 41 games, though, he scored 20 goals. He scored 20 goals in the other 41 games. And before that, he was usually about a 30 goals per 82 game pace guy. And I think he gets there. I know he hasn't done it yet, put a whole season together where he scored 30 goals, but that shot is so lethal. They use him on the #1 power play unit that I think Olofsson, for goal scoring purposes, is going to present fantasy value this year. And then I would go Dahlin over Owen Power. If Power might feel like the sexier pick because he just showed up, he's new. You draft Owen Power in your fantasy league, and everybody in the room goes, "Ooh, Owen Power!" Like you get that reaction out of people. But I think Dahlin's the better pick. I just don't think Power is going to have enough offensive zone starts and power play minutes with Dahlin already here. Dahlin is established as that dude is an amazing playmaker for the back end. He's your quarterback on the power play. When you're down 1 goal with a minute to go, he's the defenseman that you have out on the ice. And Power can maybe work his way into some of those minutes too, but he will not be #1 when it comes to those minutes. So because of that, I don't think Power puts up the necessary points to have a ton of fantasy value this year. I think Dahlin is the one that would have another step in him, even from where he's been. 53 points last year, but that was with a bad first month and a half of the season. And the All-Star break is really, I guess, where he hit his stride. He built his confidence up there, and he came back and he looked dominant. So if he looks like the second half of the season Dahlin for a whole year, I think we're talking 60 points for Dahlin, with some chance that he could even reach as high as 70.
Heck yeah, I love watching him play. Obviously, we followed the 2018 draft super closely with Ottawa having their first part of the rebuild, and we're super happy with Brady Tkachuk, but Dahlin, awesome player as well. Final question for me, who do Buffalo Sabres fans hate more, Chris Neil or Jack Eichel?
At the moment, the answer is probably Jack Eichel.
Yep.
I think I forgot what we called it. We did like a villains list for Sabres, like all time recently. Yeah. And I think we had Eichel. Do we have Eichel #2?
He's got to be up there, yeah.
I'm trying to remember who number
Aaron
one would
Dell?
have been. It was not Aaron Dell.
No.
Man, I'm really gonna struggle to remember this.
Brett
Tim
Hull?
Murray.
Might have been Brett Hull.
Yeah,
Tim
Brett
Murray.
Hull.
No, dude, Tim Murray. People like Tim Murray still. He's got
Oh
defenders.
yeah, okay.
It's solely because he was the most entered across.
He was
all
very
sports.
entertaining. Yes,
Across all sports. We cover the NFL at our station,
Yeah.
WGR in Buffalo, with the Bills, obviously. We cover the Sabres. There is no league executive, coach ever that I have heard that is a more entertaining interview than Tim Murray.
There's
yeah.
a quote that sticks out for me when he got, I forget what ended up happening, but he was like, if you would have told me 2 years ago that we would have Evander Kane, Robin Lehner, and Ryan O'Reilly, I would have told you that you're high or something like that. It was just like, oh my God.
That dude will tell you anything you want to know. And that was what made him a great interview. It's also why it kind of rubbed people the wrong way in the organization, because he's just out there telling trade secrets to everybody.
Yeah.
He might as well be tweeting them. So I loved him for that, but no, he was not a very good GM.
Obviously,
what was the question?
He was hired as Ottawa's assistant GM, or from being Ottawa's assistant GM to get the job in Buffalo.
Do you know what he's doing now?
No
You
idea.
know this? He's not in hockey anymore. In fact, I don't think he's been in hockey since the Sabres fired him.
He hasn't.
He's racing horses in Florida.
Whoa.
And
Well,
he's
all right.
winning.
That's life.
He's winning like millions of dollars. Like he's doing very well at it. So he's like become an accomplished. I don't know what you call it. Like he has horses that race. I don't know what.
Yeah, not a
he a
jockey. The
horse owner?
jockey's the one who rides it, right?
Although that'd be a funny visual if he were the one
That
actually riding the horses.
That
But
would
I don't
be.
think he's doing that.
Question was most hated player for the Buffalo Sabres.
It's probably Eichel. Right now,
Yeah.
it's probably Eichel.
But that deal's looking good.
Deal's looking good. Fans are very happy with it. That Vegas game in November, I think it's November
Epic.
13th for the Sabres, it's going to be bonkers. It was nuts. I was in the arena this past year for the Vegas game. It was nuts, that game.
Yeah.
And none of it was really that mean-spirited. I always thought Eichel took it a little too far. He takes
Takes things personally, eh?
Yeah, but like he got booed, but what do you expect? You were the face of the franchise during the worst era in the franchise's history. You're going to get booed when you touch the puck during the game. And honestly, when it was time to show respect, when that video tribute came up, it wasn't all cheers. I would estimate it was 80-20 cheers, though. I think when it was time to show respect, Sabre fans showed respect. Then he went out in postgame, and he took a shot at the organization, multiple shots at the organization, or the fan base, not just the organization.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's when it really got fired up. So if people thought that game was a crazy atmosphere, the next time he's in the building, it's going to be a circus. I cannot wait for it right now. Yeah, he just because of, honestly, strictly his post-game comments. I think everyone would be past it by now. We would be over it.
Right.
But he said what he said. I've never heard it this loud in this place, which is obviously false. Of course it has been. Yeah, he's number one. He's number one in the most hated list right now.
That's awesome. And on the other hand, when Buffalo finally comes to Ottawa in November and Craig Anderson hopefully gets a start, Ottawa hasn't been able to give him a send-off. The pandemic ended his career in Ottawa, and then he was hurt during the – I wish he wasn't. Obviously, that was the game where Aaron Dell decided to be a hero. But when Craig Anderson comes back to Ottawa, it's going to be 100% cheers. I think they're going to cheer when he makes the first save of the game, too. I think that there's that much respect. Yeah. He's by far the greatest goalie in Ottawa Senators history and led to some great runs.
Yeah, that'll be cool. He's super cool dude. He's super likable. And I didn't realize he hadn't had that send-off. That Vegas game I'm referencing, he gave the fans that night.
Hell yeah.
If Sabre fans remember, they got outplayed in that game. And they scored a couple goals, power play goal. Anderson stood on his head. He was
when he's on, like there's nobody like even at age 42, he reads the play better than any goalie. Like he comes, it's unreal, old school style.
It was the best night to be in that arena all year, and it was mostly thanks to Craig Anderson just shutting down the Golden Knights all night.
I think you just made a few fans in Ottawa with that one, Joe. We appreciate you stopping by. Everyone go give him a follow on Twitter. We're going to put the tag up on our tweet as well, and make sure you're following Locked On Sabres wherever you get your podcast. Joe, we're doing this before the home opener, so it won't be long before we get you back on. We appreciate this, brother.
Sounds good. Thanks, boys.